To hear that. Now, as you're all sitting down, it is time for our afternoon's panel, Own Your Story, Accelerate Your Journey. A big thank you to the panelists for being here today, and remember that you can check out their bios in the app. At the end of the conversation, you will have the opportunity to ask questions by lining up in the microphones that are set up on the two side aisles. We ask that you please identify yourself and mention what school organization you represent. And please keep your questions short, so no monologues, not mentioning a lot of the longer questions, just because there's a lot of you and we want everybody to have the possibility to ask questions to these amazing individuals. Does that sound good? Yeah, all right, perfect, thank you. Now, I'm very excited and thrilled to introduce our esteemed panel of women in media and in the entertainment industry. To get started, I'll turn it over to our moderator, Shelly Ruskover, who is partner of consumer tech and media at McKinsey & Company. She's a seasoned in media operations and passionate about empowering women in technology. Let's please give them a round of applause as they come to the stage.
Thank you. You guys hear me okay? Yes. All right. So I've brought with me my esteemed panelists, and I'm very excited for this conversation. So I'll start left to right. You can see their names above them. We have Robin Alston, who's at the VP and General Counsel at A&E Networks. Hi, Robin. Danielle Brown, who's SVP of Data Enablement and Category Strategy at Disney. We've got Michelle Buffardi, who's the VP of Digital Content and Commerce at Warner Brothers Discovery. We've got Kelly Coleman, who's SVP of Global Partnerships at Nielsen. And we have got Lori Denti, EVP of Ad Sales, Finance, and Operations at Fox Corp. So first off, thank you for being here. I'm going to ask a couple of questions, and because we are in media, I want to tell everyone's story. So I'd like to go down the row and just hear a little bit more about your origin story. What was it that attracted you to media, and what was kind of your introduction to the industry?
Okay,
Laura, you want to
I'll start, sure. Well, I'm a CPA by trade, and when I was cycling out of PricewaterhouseCoopers, I was interviewing with a bunch of companies, some of which were my clients. But I felt a real connection to Time Inc. because I was a real consumer of their products. So for those of you who may not know, they publish People and InStyle and Time Magazine, et cetera. And I think I was really drawn to the product. I could connect with it. So yeah, that's how I started in media.
Perfect.
Hi, everyone. I actually didn't start in media. So my media connection came from networking. With friends and family. And so I got to Nielsen off of my expertise in marketing and relationship management. And so a lot of that brought me into the media space, and I've been here 12 years, but I had a different background from B2C. I worked at Reebok, I worked at Macy's, all having connections to media, but my core wasn't in the media industry until I got to Nielsen.
Yeah, and we'll talk about connections in a bit.
Yeah.
Michelle?
I got into media by accident as well. I am an English major. I am an English major. I don't think you recover. So I thought I wanted to be a teacher and realized that wasn't the right path for me. So just tried to think of something that I liked, and I liked reading, and just decided I wanted to be an editor, but I had no internships. I had nothing. So I went to a program at NYU, their publishing program, and then, which is really a networking program. And then from there, got into magazines and moved into more media.
Great.
I started my career on the agency side of the business, so I wanted to at one point be a creative. I don't know why I thought I could do it, but I started applying for jobs for creative roles at different agencies. And I wasn't getting those jobs, but I ended up applying for an assistant buyer role at McCann, which is part of IPG and the Media Brands group of agencies. So that's how I got my foot in the door in the industry. And then after being there for a year or so, got a job at ESPN, which we can talk about later. And that's how I became part of the Disney family.
I absolutely didn't start out in media. I started out as a securities lawyer, and then I worked for a pharmaceutical company. Then I got married and moved to New York and didn't know if I wanted to practice law anymore, so I temped and answered phones at production companies, and I was getting on the subway and saw a billboard for a talk show. And it was a judge show, and I happened to know the judge because I had been in her courtroom as an intern, and I'd sent her my resume and ended up working on syndicated talk and was like, wow, this is a fun way to practice law. And that was how I did.
Wow. I think that might win. No offense.
No offense taken.
That's a cool story.
That is very cool. All right. So we have a number of early professionals in our audience. So I want to take you back to the early part of your career, whether it was in media or otherwise, and even just start with what was something that surprised you positively or negatively at the start of your career. I'll give you a minute to soak that in.
I can start. One of the things that surprised me, and it's really because of my parents. My mom's a retired nurse and my dad's a retired engineer. And one of the things that I learned pretty quickly being in media and advertising is that putting your head down and doing the work is fantastic, but you also need to make connections. I know we've already touched on that. Building your network is really critical in growing in your career and trying on new things. So my parents kind of taught me growing up, you put your head down and you do the work and you'll get acknowledged, which in their roles absolutely worked. But in media and advertising, I found very quickly that you need to make bridge connections, build those networks so that when you are ready and thinking about other steps in your career, that there are people that already know you and you have those established relationships. That was something that I learned pretty quickly at ESPN. But it's, since then has been a great journey. And, I just feel like that was something that because I wasn't raised that way, I had to learn on my own. So that surprised me.
Yeah. I think in that same vein too, my parents, my mother was a teacher and worked in education. My father was an engineer. He worked different hours, worked for Chrysler for many years. And so a part of that is I saw them heads down doing what my mother was always at a conference, always at a meeting, students, everything. They were always calling and, she was in that world, and that's very different from the corporate world and even in any of the environments that I've worked in, and navigating that and being agile. So moving from different companies after, 4 or 5 years after experience was foreign to my parents. And I remember my dad being like, why are you leaving this company again? What are you doing? I thought we worked it all out. And I'm like, well, this is a great opportunity. And they just weren't accustomed to that. And that was a big change for me.
Building on what you just said, I think the other thing too, even within an organization, it's constantly evolving and changing and shifting. So your ability to get comfortable with the concept of change and be flexible, I think that's also very important. And by the way, those types of things lead to opportunities, right? Because when there's change, there's always sort of a void that you can step into and benefit from, frankly.
Yeah.
I can remember before we started working and going, wow, I spent a lot of time here. It was a revelation, that big hunk of time in my life where I am not home. And I realized really quickly I gotta like these people that I'm spending all this time with. It's very important. The work is the work, and you can do the most amazing job that you think is the most amazing job in the world, but if you don't like the people or you can't get along, it will be a miserable place to be. So I learned to be very comfortable making decisions, yes, on the work, but also on the culture and the environment and understanding what fit for me. And, I remember going to my first law firm interview in the first law firm. There were fox hunts on the walls. It was mahogany. Everybody wore their suit coat. They called each other by their last name. And I was like, And I went down the elevator bank, and I went back up to the next one, and it was white marble. And nobody had a suit coat on. Everybody's called everybody by their first name. I was like, this is more, Andy Warhol's on the wall. I was like, this is more me. Same kind of work. Same, they're going to do similar stuff. but I knew that that culture was going to fit me, which meant I would do better, work there than the other.
Yeah.
The thing that surprised me was the power of an assistant. So a lot of, first career jobs are pretty, they're at the bottom of the org. Whether you're an editorial assistant or there are dozens of types of assistants, it can feel like you're doing work that's not glamorous, and people are sometimes nice to you, sometimes they're not. But you're also in a super powerful position because you're in everyone's inboxes. And I have a regret about that time. I probably didn't do as good of a job connecting on LinkedIn, and it was a million years ago, so that wasn't as big of a thing. But you just get to know everything and everybody, and if you hang on to that and really learn from it, it can be really valuable.
I was going to bring this up later, but let's pull this thread around kind of networking and connections, because it's already come up as so important. For many, I can say for myself, when I first heard the word networking, it just makes me cringe. It's just so not in my DNA. It just feels kind of superficial or whatnot, or fake. What are some kind of tips or advice, practical tips you can offer in terms of making that more enjoyable, more effective, and where it is worth the time versus not?
Well, it's interesting because we were just talking a few moments ago before we came out here about the fact that, and I think it might have been you that said it, that you have to be aware of sort of every interaction, right? Because you never know where that interaction will lead. And I was specifically referring to a time when I went into a retail outlet just before closing. So the salespeople in the store were thrilled to see me. And it was in the maternity section, and this young woman was just so lovely, and she couldn't have been more customer service oriented, despite the fact that, that announcement 5 minutes till closing. And she was a high school graduate. She was young. She hadn't aspired to college yet. She couldn't afford it or whatever. And I gave her my business card and I said, listen, if you're interested in moving into the corporate arena, give me a buzz. And sure enough, she emailed me. I wound up hiring her at the company I was at the time. It was Time Inc. We had tuition reimbursement. She put herself through college, and then when she ultimately left for even greater career trajectory, I got the loveliest note from her thanking me for giving her that opportunity. And it was frankly one of the most rewarding experiences of my life, never mind hers. So one of the things I would say about networking is be mindful of all interactions. It doesn't have to be like a formal networking event, right? Because those feel sometimes stilted and forced. But yeah.
I think it's also just about putting yourself in environments that you want to learn and you want to engage with the people there. It's being authentic. So finding the right places, whether they're industry organizations that, Center of Communications organizations like this that are doing things, having networking events that make, that you're in a comfortable space. But networking is something that is constant. I don't look at it as just like going to this networking event. To your point, it is meeting people and showing up with your authentic self, creating a space for people to feel that they can be authentic with you and share. And it doesn't have to be, while can be a transaction, it doesn't have to feel so transactional in how you want to network and get to know people.
Yeah, I think Kelly brought up the key word, which is authenticity. It has to be genuine because people can tell when it's not. So think about what you want to learn, what bridges you want to build. Do your research before you talk to somebody. Everybody's profiles are on LinkedIn. You can actually, ahead of time, if you know that person's going to be at an event or something that you're going to, if that's somebody you want to reach out to, you can do research in advance and kind of build the bridge from a genuine place. So if there's a skill set that you're looking to learn, or if there's a company you want to get to know, I would say up front do the background work as much as you possibly can. And then when you meet the person, you know a little bit about the organization or a little bit about what they do, and then have genuine interest. I think that makes a huge difference.
And peer-to-peer networking is just as helpful in this, because you are connected with someone that may be going through similar situations and navigating different, same environments, maybe at different places. And so networking just doesn't have to be trying to meet the next SVP or the CEO. It could be also meeting someone that is, looking to do something you're similar to do or in the same type of situation. So don't forget those connections.
And I would even build on that and say, for those of you that are still in school, I'm confident that a lot of your professors have relationships with a lot of organizations, so you should definitely explore those as well.
I would say networking also doesn't end, literally doesn't end, but it should be done when you are employed. So I think once you have a job, get to know other people in other departments, ask your manager if they know someone in legal or whatever department that you're interested in, making more contacts in or learning more about, and know that it does feel transactional and cringy. It goes both ways. You can help that person, they can help you. It's just like a friendship. If you're at a bar or at a party, you probably wouldn't feel weird talking to a friend of a friend. It's pretty similar.
And just to add to that, anytime that's happened either in my mentees' lives or even in my career, later on it pays off. So that person you met with in legal might help you with a contract 3 years from now, and you already have that relationship built, so there's trust from the first day you start working together. I think that's a great point, because those relationships you build early do benefit you, especially within the same company, but even outside the company you're at, because it can benefit you, and that relationship is established from day one when you're working on a project with somebody.
I want to go back to a point about admins and network within a company. You got to learn to be respectful to everyone that you're meeting. Be kind in your interactions. Don't just manage up.
Yeah.
Because that is the very transparent thing for people to do, and it's people see it. So, you getting to know everyone, no matter, and you don't know where people will be in 2, 5, 10 years from now. So you have to go in to everyone within an organization that you're working at, when you're in school, and be kind and respectful and interested and reciprocate. Right? Like you said, it doesn't just run what you want. What can I do? I had a college friend the other day, and I looked at her. I said, "What do you need from me? Like, I know what you do. Can I help you in my company to help your business?" So, and then down the road, and I did it truly just because she's my friend. But I mean, that's easy networking. That's easy networking. And I learned that in law school when I had this revelation. I had a friend, one of my really good friends, and I said, "What do you want to do? What do you want to do when you get out of law school?" He's like, I want to be a senator. And I said, "Okay." And I looked at him, I said, "So when you're a senator and I need to call you for something," I was like, that's how this works. So, it starts in a very organic way, and you just let it, flow.
I think what you said is important. You never know where somebody's going to end up and when you'll need that relationship. And it does feel, again, transactional. And when you are approaching someone because you're looking for a job, it is about that. But 3 years down the road, 10 years down the road, when you're looking for a contributor or somebody to do an interview, or you want to do a deal or something, it's not always going to be about, I'm looking for a job, I need this person. You're just looking to have a conversation and make a professional friend or connection.
All good tips. Okay, I'm gonna bring it back to each of you, because media encompasses a lot of things, from publishing to music to film to television, et cetera, to information services. So as everyone is navigating their career, it's helpful to make sense of what it is that you actually do. So can you give us a sense of what your role and responsibilities are? What does your day-to-day look like?
Okay.
Whoever would.
Start. First of all, my day-to-day looks different every day. And frankly, I think everyone probably up here would say the same thing, and that's frankly part of the attraction for me. But I'm a CPA. I went the finance track, right? So moving into media was a very interesting sort of pivot. But I work with the ad sales group at Fox Corporation, and I support the team, and more specifically, I work very closely with the executive leadership of the team to help set and execute on the strategy. I'm also responsible for the setting of forecasts and budgets and all those kind of things and monthly closes and sort of the very mundane things like credit and collection and things like that. So because I have a vast portfolio of responsibilities, no 2 days feel the same to me.
Agree about that. And also this year, we've had a lot of transformation at Nielsen. So my job has shifted even in the recent months. And so overall, I have led Nielsen's brand as to where we show up and how our brand shows up from an experience standpoint. And then additionally, I lead our trade association partnership. So always in relationship management. Sometimes it feels like I'm in client service. Sometimes it feels like I am knee deep in product, which I am not a subject matter expert, but sometimes I need to put that hat on. And then certain times we are doing more administrative things of how are we connecting this client to this trade association, or how are we showing up here. So it can run the day of it feeling very event and program heavy to very strategic product heavy. So it kind of just depends on what I'm working on.
My days don't look the same ever either. I think that's pretty typical for all of us. I oversee content and content strategy. I say my job is really solving problems, whether it's people on my team who have bottlenecks, untangling those, figuring out where to connect within the company to get something done. We've been through a couple of M&As at Warner Brothers Discovery, so the company is enormous. So it can take a half a day or more to figure out who to go to. So I do a lot of that, really enabling my team to do their jobs. I started off editing and writing and being in the weeds, and I really love that. And now I just oversee the team that does that. We work a lot with talent, so figuring out what to do with somebody who has a show coming up, how we can support them, how we can promote them and their show. I work on commerce content across our brand, so figuring out what that looks like for a brand like TLC versus Discovery or Animal Planet or Food Network, just some examples.
I lead our measurement team for advertising, as well as our category strategy team. So for measurement, we work really closely with Kelly at Nielsen and others to measure the value and scale of our audiences. The Walt Disney Company is a great storytelling company, has a lot of brands such as National Geographic, Hulu, ABC, ESPN. So I have the great fortune of telling our advertisers how do they perform within the content that they're running, and whether that be in the linear space or in streaming, which is continuing to grow for the Walt Disney Company. And now it actually supersedes our linear footprint. And then our category strategy team is closely intertwined with research and measurement. That team, we have a bunch of industry vertical experts. They're kind of heads of industry, and they work with our clients to share how do they best reach their audiences. So for a tech and telco client, where are early tech adopters across the portfolio at the Walt Disney Company? Where can we find those audiences? So we're working with them based on either their campaigns or what they're looking to learn to build out insights so that they can best reach their consumer across all of our brands, whether that be in linear or streaming.
So I am in the legal and business affairs group for our content legal. And so so I work for A&E Networks. So we're A&E, History, Lifetime. Those are our big linear channels. And we don't, as a network, we, for the most part, don't produce our programming in-house. We hire third-party production companies to produce our content. So I do all of the deals with those third-party production companies to do Bring It or Dance Moms or Alone. And so those third parties are out there producing. We do the contracts, sometimes do the talent deals for the programming. So that's the unscripted side. I'm over all of the movies for Lifetime. So all of the Christmas movies fall under me. So I do the deals with the production companies for some of our thrillers and our holiday movies to produce those. I do ad sales and marketing. Legal is my team as well. And so we're supporting the ad sales team and marketing and promotions. And then we also have a studio. So we have a standalone studio that produces content like a production company. So we might produce for Disney Plus. And so I do those deals as well. So I have a team of folks who I oversee who's touching basically all parts of the content piece of our company.
Lovely. And this is just a fraction of the role, so just as everyone is thinking about where they can fit within media, there are a lot of options. Where networking can come in handy is just trying to make sense of it. So an easy way to start that conversation. Okay, so I want to get a sense, big part of today's conversation is the importance of female leadership in the workplace. So I'd love to hear stories and examples from your own career around a female leader who really made an impact in your trajectory.
I can start. So Rita Ferro is president of global advertising at Disney. And I first met Rita before she integrated all of the brands under one portfolio cell. I attended an awards luncheon. I was a director at the time at ESPN. And she's received many awards, but this was one of the first that I had been in her presence of when she was accepting the award. And she gave a really amazing speech, very inspiring speech, and I didn't know her, I'd never met her. And I sent her an email congratulating her and asking her for time after we all got back to the office. She emailed me back in less than 2 minutes, which I was shocked because she was already a president but just hadn't integrated ESPN into the portfolio, her portfolio yet, and immediately booked time with me. And then when I spent time with her, she was really sincere and honest about both the success in her career, but the challenges. And I think that transparency really inspired me because not everything obviously is going to be easy as you're growing in your career. And the fact that it was my first one-on-one conversation with her and she shared kind of the ups and downs of her trajectory really helped benefit the way that I looked at things. I've had many female mentors over the years, but that interaction with Rita very early on, before she had all of the brands underneath her, really was amazing because I felt like she was so transparent and so relatable. So I try to do that for people when I meet them, but she's just at a global scale and just somebody that's really warm and transparent. And I thought that was a great moment for me because I learned so much from her even in that half an hour.
I would say someone who I have looked up to, she's really my friend. She was actually my first boss at Nielsen. Personally, I feel such a strong connection to her outside of her just bringing me in, showing me, being an example, being a Black woman in a leadership role at Nielsen. Outside of all of those things, she was really a kind person. Mm-hmm. I unfortunately lost my father at some point midway in my career, and the level of kindness that she showed me during that time of grief, I'm 100% always indebted to her during that time. And so she's someone that I really just admire. I get teary-eyed thinking about it as, and she's left Nielsen since then and gone off and is working at Paramount as a EVP, but she is someone that I really just admire, and it was the kindness, because not every boss, not every company allows that kind of kindness, so yes.
Yeah, and for me, I would say, even though it was a little bit later in my career, it would be hands down, without a doubt, Marianne Gambelli, who was the president of ad sales at Fox. She started out in one of the divisions, and then very shortly thereafter, she was put over all of the verticals, so news, sports, and entertainment. And I was working for someone else, and I'm now working for her. And I was sure that within 5 minutes she would replace me with someone that she would bring in on her own. But she gave me a chance. She trusts her leaders. She's entrepreneurial. She's kind. You reminded me of when I actually had, COVID, like round 1 COVID, and I was so deathly sick. She had meals sent to my house every night. I mean, because I had young kids. But she's smart and she's strategic. and kind, and she allows her leaders to lead, and she doesn't necessarily, feel the need to control everything. And she's just built such an incredible culture. And when she first came in, I was sure I was out of a job, and instead she has sort of promoted me internally because I report in through the finance org, right? And I work for the CFO, and frankly, she was part of the reason why I was promoted to EVP. So certainly someone who's had a major impact on my career.
Someone who had a major impact on my career was our group GM, Vicki Neal, and she was the first example of a female leader. The word authenticity has been used a few times, but I think prior to my experience working with her, I had worked with other individuals, male and female, who were maybe less authentic or didn't bring their whole selves, and I thought that was the way you had to be at work. You don't talk about your family, you don't talk about your personal life, you just put your head down and get your work done. And that's one way of being, but when Vicki came into our org, she had a smaller role and took on a greater role, which meant dozens more people. She actually reached out to me, and she had reached out to several, I don't know if I was a director or a manager at the time, but she reached out to several individuals and asked me to get coffee, and I was just blown away that someone would do that. But again, like, networking doesn't just work one way or one level. So she had coffee with me, and we talked professionally, but also personally, and I think I worked under her for maybe 5 or 6 years, and really got to know her as a person and a mom who had a busy life outside, and that's really important, to be your whole self and to welcome that in your coworkers, and that made a really big difference to me.
I would say probably my current boss. I've been there for 12 years and report to Maggie. She was an intern at the company, so she's been there for over 30 years. And so I wasn't even there a year, 6 months. I screwed up. I messed something up. And when you go into development on a show, you'll say, okay, you're going to develop this idea, give me a sizzle reel. You have 90 days, 120 days to network to decide if we want to produce this show. Somehow, I kind of know how, it was 30 in this contract I did. So we had 30 days to determine whether or not we wanted to pick this show up. The head of the network, it was for Lifetime, went bananas. Calls down, just screaming at her, and so she calls me in her office, and she sits me down. I hear her talking to him, and she says, we're overwhelmed down here. We got a lot of work, and no, it's not. And she went on. She hung up the phone. She looked at me, and she said, "What happened?" I said, "I messed up." And she said, "Won't happen again?" And I said, "No." And she said, "All right," and that was it. And she didn't. And at that point, I was like, I will go to the end of the earth for you, because you had my back, right? You trust me. This is not how I do work. We're moving fast. We've got to get this stuff out of here. I've never, ever, 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 ever done that again. It's one of those things you're like, won't do that again. Luckily, the network wanted the show, and it went on to be a big hit. But that, knowing that there's somebody back there who is supporting you and has your back and your best interest, always my best interest. I trust that she is looking out for me. I trust, and we'll talk about this, she's a mentor, but a sponsor too. So, I know she's going to be very honest with me about things. And it's been a great relationship. Back to the people part of it. I never minded going to work, because COVID hit me hard, because I would pop down in her office every morning with a cup of coffee, like what's going on today? Yeah. And she's been there forever. She's very high up in the company, very well respected. But, just knowing someone is supporting you like that is very important.
You sound awesome women. Lovely. So I want to shift, before we go into the Q&A section, I want to shift into a few more questions that may be already percolating in the minds of our audience here. So you all have hired interns and employees. Can you give, beyond the relevant technical skills, what are some of the qualities that you are looking for? What makes someone stand out?
For me, I think much earlier on when I was hiring people, jobs were pretty specific. We were hiring an editor to do this, and this is what you're going to do until, you're ready to move on. Now job descriptions are really more fluid, and when I'm hiring somebody, I have a job description. This is definitely what I need right now, but I'm looking for somebody who is versatile, because I know that job is going to change. It could change in 3 days or 6 months or a year. Sometimes it's very specific. I'm looking for a person who can do this and this, but often I'm looking for somebody who has a second skill. It might be different in all the people I'm interviewing, but an editor who can also shoot photography or edit videos, or just, it shows that willingness to have, just that versatility, and somebody who's going to be okay with that switch. And I always tell people in interviews, your job is definitely going to change. I just can't tell you what, but somebody who's going to be okay with that. And then secondarily, I would say that a passion for the content or the brand. We all work at these name brands. Know what you're talking about, know the shows or the, whatever the content that the company produces, and show that you have a passion for it and an understanding of it.
Yeah, I would say, in addition to having a passion for the work or the industry, someone who's resourceful. I think so much to your point, the job may change, there are things that may shift, and so someone who's willing to be adaptable to that change, but also be resourceful in how that change, how we can impact that change, how can we continue to grow, is like what I'm looking for the most. Because I feel like a lot of the work in what I do in partnerships, some of it is very technical or executional, and then some of it is a lot of it is very strategic, and you have to be creative in how we want to, have these partnerships. How do we want to engage this brand with our product? And so you have to get creative in how you do that, and working across functions, across many team members. So someone who's willing to be a bit creative and resourceful in that nature is very helpful.
I would say to that end, I like it when someone's asking questions. Like, you're not going to know everything when you start a job. There's no way you're going to come in and understand the job. So I need people to understand what they don't understand. And don't just try and figure it out. If you can't figure it out, ask questions. Like, I'm expecting people to ask me questions. There's always going to be a learning curve to any job that you start. And, this goes for school. I tell my kids, you don't know everything. And that's what the teachers are for. When you don't know, go ask questions. So the resourceful part, I need you to be resourceful, either figure out how to find the answer, know who to ask the questions to, or come ask me. That is part, because your willingness and understanding that you still always are learning is very important.
Yeah, I agree with what everybody said. I was going to say something similar, like having that thirst for learning, really having a passion for either the organization, the content, like everything that everybody was saying. But I think you can really tell the difference when somebody is like checking a box for an internship versus somebody who really wants to learn. And that distinction could make the difference between being a full-time hire one day or not. So I think that thirst for learning and that energy that you bring to the table really makes a difference.
And just understanding that internships often are there to tell you as much what you don't like as what you like. So you may not like it. It's okay. But that's the point of having these opportunities, is to help figure your path.
I mean, there's not much more to add to that, because I agree with everything that's been said. The other thing I would say too is, and this is perhaps more innate in certain people than others, but good communication skills, your ability to speak well and or write well, et cetera, because so much of your interactions are going to be interpersonal.
Well, so, we talked a lot about being resourceful, being adaptable, and the fact that the media industry is changing so rapidly. So very practical tips. How do you stay up to date, current? What are some tips to help everyone here also stay up to date in a very rapidly changing space?
I say this to my team a lot, but there are much more resources now than when I was starting in the industry. Podcasts was not a thing, or were not a thing. There are a lot of industry trades I'm constantly reading. I read more trades than I do actual books these days, which is not great, but I'm working on that. But podcasts as well. If you're looking to learn about any of the disciplines that we have on this panel, there's a podcast that can teach you something about that. There's a lot of industry resources if you're interning at a company like one of ours that you would have access to, that you can do a lot of the work and the research on your own. I'm a big believer in that, and I always tried to do that in my career. But also, like, there's, I'm trying to think of one of the podcasts. Pivot is a good one. There's a lot of different good podcasts about the business and the industry, whether that be technology, media, creative, research. So I would say any of those resources those are the ways that I keep track. I listen to podcasts on my commute about our industry and what's going on. And I think that those are great ways to do it, kind of while you're on the move.
Yeah.
sorry.
Part of your networking can be going to people within your company and saying, tell me how you do what you do. I had a whole research to me was one of those things. I was like, explain ratings to me, and and I would meet with my friend down in their little cafeteria area, and I was like, I need to understand how this works. And I mean, and that was, a way to network. I have friends in the industry. Explain how you do what you do. So, in ways of talking about jobs, you can always, peers, friends, people within your company in different divisions, ask them how they do what they do and what they do and what that means and what it means to you and how it impacts you and this and that, because it's all going to be interconnected, and that's something you need to understand.
And the nice thing about that is that's also networking.
It's networking.
So you're
For one.
getting both done.
Yeah, I agree with the networking piece. I went to an event yesterday, an AI event, which is a knowledge gap for me, and it's happening at no one's going to say, here's the information that you need, now you can do your job. I have to figure that out myself, and it's big and it's intimidating, and there's a lot of information, but I've approached people that are in my network that I notice are posting about things I'm interested in. Podcasting is another topic. You don't have to do that for your job, but approach somebody and say, I'm really interested in your work in this thing. Can we, do a virtual coffee for a half hour? I'd love to hear what you're up to. Or go to events. There are tons of free events, especially in New York. I'm sure in many other cities as well. Go to them, meet people, ask for time, ask for 5 minutes, ask for a half hour, and you'll start to learn a little bit more, and you'll figure out who to follow and what podcasts to listen to, and without informational overload, because that does happen, but it's really the networking piece.
Yeah. The thing from an event standpoint, as a person who leads partnerships and works a lot with our trade associations in media, that's a great source and a great place. They have a lot of what some call young pros or student-run committees. And that right there, they have webinars and free events. So if you are currently at a company, see what you have access to, because a lot of times companies will have a membership with these industry bodies, and you're automatically a member if you have an email address of Nielsen.com, right? And so that alone gives you content that you can read, articles, white papers, whatever it is, in addition to free events to network and or listen to, like webinars. So that's a great resource. And you get to network with other folks that are interested in your industry.
Yeah, same at Fox. We have employee resource groups. We have groups dedicated to women's development and progression. We have mentorship programs. So I would say all these things, stating the obvious, is following companies you're interested in on social media platforms, et cetera. So there's lots of ways to do it.
Lovely. So I want to open up the floor. We have 2 mics, one on each side. And so if you have questions for the panel, feel free to line up, and we'll take them for the next 15 or so minutes. And while you're doing that, just a quick summary of a couple things I heard from this esteemed panel. One is networking doesn't have to be painful. No. It can actually be quite natural and double dip into a learning opportunity. 2, is be kind to everyone, because you never know who they might be, what your relationship will evolve to be, so on. We have a third takeaway? I feel like as a consultant, there should be 3.
Be your authentic
Be authentic self. There you go. I like that one. Mm-hmm. Be your authentic self. I agree. It's tiring enough to just work. Perfect. So it seems everyone's lined up on this side. So I will open up and feel free to ask your question to the panel.
Hi,
And
my
please
name-
introduce yourself.
Oh yeah. Hi, my name is Mara. Thank you so much for joining us today. And my question is about we were talking today about resumes and LinkedIn and having a title. And my question is when did you figure out what kind of set you apart, or what was your superpower? Was there a specific moment, or were there a bunch of moments?
I can say this. I think it's something that you are going to constantly learn. I think I am personally in a super transparent moment realizing what my superpower is. I think there's things that I thought, but honestly, I think, for me, my superpower is influence. And how can knowing that now, and I might not have had that same thought, 5 years ago or 10 years ago, but knowing that now I'm thinking about how I can, how do I best leverage that in the environments that I'm in, or the environments that I want to be, and the work I want to do. So to answer your question, I think it's constantly evolving. I think some people learn and get their superpower early and they go right into their lane and do that. And then some people, it's an evolution, and both are okay. As long as you're learning throughout the process and you are putting, you're learning through it all. And I think that's the takeaway of it. That's just my personal opinion.
I would say too, don't think your superpower is something that's really hard for you to attain. I went to a program and we had a life coach, and we were an executive coach, and I'm talking to her, and she asked me a question. I said, yeah, that comes really easy to me. I can do, and she said, just because it comes easy doesn't mean it's not a strength.
Yeah.
So those things that you think are naturally who you are and what you do doesn't mean they're not yours, that it has to be some great thing to be a superpower. It could just be the way that you do X, Y, and Z that may not be so natural for other people. They have to work a little harder at. Yeah. So sometimes your superpower, you may not think it's super to you, but it is a superpower.
Thank you.
Oh, we'll go on this side.
Hi, my name is Ayana. I'm a recent graduate of Adelphi University. And my question is, so I think like all of us, we're starting out in our careers, and myself, I'm really interested in a lot of different areas of media. So I guess my question would be, would you recommend maybe casting a wider net and to see when you apply to jobs, apply to a bunch of different areas, or would you recommend maybe kind of pinpointing one area first and then venturing out?
I'd recommend choosing companies that you're interested in, because if your net's too wide, it's just going to get overwhelming and you're just going to feel terrible. So if you choose a few companies that you're really interested in and focus on a few roles, if you're entry level, they're going to be assistant roles, or start to learn the titles that have the number of years of experience that you have, and maybe go a little above, 2 to 3 years maybe. So I would start that way, and again, network, try to find connections at those companies. Maybe you can get referrals, or you can learn more about other roles or other titles. I find that job titles are all over the place in the industry, and it's really hard to know, something, the same title might mean 5 different things, but when you have those conversations with individuals at the company that you're looking at, they can give you insight into how to hone a little bit better.
Yeah. I would also just ask, because you mentioned that you are interested in a lot of different things, and to the point around the job titles and to what you said earlier, it's probably going to change 6 months after you get there. So lean into what you're in, companies that you're interested in, what aligns with your goals and purpose, and the work is going to shift. So you don't have to worry about finding your interest or getting, doing multiple things. You will be doing multiple things regardless. So lean into the company aspect of it.
You also don't have to get it right the first time. Nope. You probably just need a job. You need a foot in the door, you need a job, you need to start building your experience, and that first job might be the thing that you continue for a few years, or you might realize, with an internship, I actually don't really like this, but you can use it to make connections and learn what you do want to do, and maybe you start off in a video department and you're like, oh, this is terrible. How do I pivot in a year or two, or even quicker?
I would just add, I think that it's great that you have multiple areas of interest, because if you look at senior leadership across any of the Fortune 500 companies, many of them have expertise in a lot of different areas. So having different areas of expertise is beneficial for your long-term career. So it's good to be open and not pigeonhole yourself into one lane.
Thank you.
Shifting to this side.
Hi, my name is Nina Nichelle from the New School, Media Management, Intellectual Property Towards AI. First of all, thank you so much. I'm girl fanning right now to be in a room with such powerful women. I'm actually shaking because it's very rare that you're in an opportunity like this, so thank you. 2 questions, well, very quickly. One would be, how do you integrate in your organization AI? And 2, how are you guys dealing with, at one point of your career, with mansplaining? And I would like all your personal information, direct contact information. And Robin, I would particularly like to offer you coffee at any time of your convenience because of AI and because of intellectual property, so.
I'm sorry, the first question was around AI?
Yes, how are you integrating AI into your corporations and how are you using it? And the second question is, at one point of your career, because I'm sure you've all dealt with it, of mansplaining.
God, can you imagine if mansplaining was
Robin,
like
I still want to take you for coffee.
This is why we need women in technology, so that it doesn't get into the algorithms.
I can start. In terms of AI and machine learning, Disney has a very vast and expansive audience graph, and we've used that to build lookalike models and things of that nature. In terms of generative AI, we're still in the exploratory phase as to how we're going to use it. We do think there's benefits to it, of course, but I think it's still early phase of AI right now in terms of generative AI and the right ways to use it and which ways it can enhance our business. But we do a lot of machine learning within our audience modeling team and within the graph. Mansplaining. So this is where like it's important to have a room of like other women in the room, I think, because there have been many times where I've seen somebody mansplain and I'll jump in and be like, oh, that's what Laura just said, and thank you for adding to that. So you're kind of I hate to use the word checking, but you're kind of addressing it in the moment. Right. If you're the only woman in the room and that happens to you, it's a little bit harder, but you can say, thank you for echoing my point. Like there are ways to do that in a way that's not too aggressive. But thank you for that vote of confidence. And here's what I think about this topic. There are kind of ways to do it. It depends on how it goes down. Yeah. But it is important to have I think other women in the room to kind of jump in and rectify that on your behalf, because I've done it for people and people have done it for me.
Yeah.
And sometimes it may be as simple as a lack of awareness. And depending upon the circumstance, it may be a conversation that you have directly with that person afterwards to sort of raise awareness or whatever, if depending upon, again, the circumstances and if the situation doesn't allow for something more public in the immediate term.
And you definitely need the person you vent to after it happens.
That was my answer too. I slack my friend and just that awareness. I think the other thing that should be talked about is just splaining in general. I think there's mansplaining, but women do it too. I think just being really cognizant of that. And I think often, I think just personally in my organization, I've experienced women who have had that done to them, who then do it, like they develop that. That's actually not the way to combat it. So I think talking about it with your coworkers and not naming names, but like, this has happened. How can we talk about this within our org? We all need to dedicate ourselves to not doing that.
Thank you so much.
Okay. On this side.
Hi, can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. My name is Noemi. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your, I'm pretty sure, very busy days, as you've explained. You guys all mentioned that you got into advertising or communications by accident, and you guys have like jumped around in different places. Have you guys ever felt like a shift or just like an awkward phase of transitioning into new positions, or just in general getting used to the new environment?
Transition is always awkward.
All the time. Yeah.
It's uncomfortable. It can be uncomfortable. You get comfortable, and then another opportunity presents itself, and you have to figure out and think, do I want to be uncomfortable again? So that's absolutely normal. And like I said, there's always a learning curve. There's getting to know new people. There's getting to know people's quirks and rhythms. And so knowing that transition is always going to be uncomfortable, maybe for a minute. You're not going to probably jump in someplace and it all just goes swimmingly well, you know, and knowing what's important to you and how much discomfort you can take, right? So I went from syndicated talk to the network because I had very young kids. And when you work production, you don't have control of your time. So I had no control of my days off. I had no control of my vacation. If we were in production, I had to be there. And so I had to make the choice at that point, even though I felt I had the best bosses in the world, that I needed to make a change, because that point right there, I couldn't, maintain the balance. And that's how I ended up where I am now. And at some point, you have to weigh what's important to you. Flexibility can be important. There's certain things that money can't, buy you. So you need to always weigh at the points you are in your life, what's important to you, what you're looking for. So you can be uncomfortable in the situation you're in. You can be transitioned uncomfortable. And it's just, I think, a part of life.
Yeah. A boss early on told me that, and it was promotion time, and I was, we all aligned on what that promotion should be. And then some things came into play, and we had a conversation, and, she did, everything ended up working out. But in that moment, she gave me the sound advice is that, Kelly, you have to make sure you know what you want, and what's gonna matter to you. Sometimes it's job title, sometimes, it's the money only, sometimes it's the flexibility that you need for whatever your family looks like, but you have to know what those things are. You have to ask yourself what those things are that matter, because that's what's gonna get you up every morning to do the work. That's what's gonna keep, parts of it keeps you motivated. And so, yeah, understanding that because all of the other stuff will happen. Jobs will change, roles will change, people will change. You'll get uncomfortable, get comfortable, get uncomfortable again. And so you wanna know what you need at those moments.
And the other thing I would add to that is transitional moments are typically the biggest moments of growth in your career. If you're just comfortable your entire career, it's probably not the best thing. I think that those awkwardness or changes, transformation in the industry, in your business, at your company, is an area of opportunity a lot of times. And the people that embrace change and embrace transformation tend to be the ones that grow and get rewarded for that.
Yeah.
I would add that I don't remember who gave me this advice. It was really good. I wish I remember, but it typically takes around 6 months to settle into a new role. So give yourself that grace. You wanna get it really quickly. You wanna do well. You wanna know all the answers and be able to, do complete tasks really efficiently. It really does take 6 months until you know all the right people and how to do everything.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you for this panel. I'm Miranda. I'm a senior at NYU. I was curious how any of you might have been able to integrate social justice initiatives into your work in media. I'm trying to sort of marry the two worlds, so I'd be especially interested to hear that in terms of content, partnerships, advertising, but also work culture.
So I co-chair the Multicultural Advisory Council at my company, and I think it's probably been around for 7+ years. And so social justice, diversity, we look at everything collectively in the company, the content that we produce, the people who produce the content, so diversity behind the camera, on the camera, to make sure that there's authenticity in the stories that we're telling. That, so that's how within and again, what we do is out there on screen. So you're looking at the content, but there's all the making sure that what is that, it's not just enough to have the stories told and the diversity on the screen. The stories need to be authentic and real, and making sure that everyone is represented equitably. I work for a network that does a lot of crime programming, and that's a big conversation that we have, the equity in the programming that we're telling, and that's not imbalanced as far as whose stories are getting told and how. So that's how I do it within my company.
I lead our Black Employee Resource Group, and so for our side, we do a lot around internal and making sure retention and things like that from a diversity perspective. But then there's things that we do that impact our product, and making sure that we are measuring all people and what that looks like, and how we can continue to shine a spotlight on different communities. So quarterly or yearly, we produce that are free what we call diverse intelligence reports, and they're focused in on Black Americans, Asian Americans, and Hispanic Americans, and it gives an overview of it slates different topics, across media and media consumption, and that's something that we give back to the public. So a lot of nonprofits use it. A lot of it's free on our website that you can have access to, and it's a wealth of information and data and insights that a lot of companies, especially if they can't pay for Nielsen services, use to help amplify their presentations and the work that they're doing.
Hi, my name's Yan. I'm an assurance associate in PwC. And I have a follow-up question to Naomi's question about transition in your career path. I know almost all of you mentioned you have a transition from another career to media industry. I'm also just did an internal transfer from financial service to TMT sector, and eventually trying to get into media and entertainment industry. But I find it extremely challenging in terms of you need to pick up new skill set and pick up those quickly, and also you need to build new network in an industry you may not know anyone before. So I do want to ask for advice on how to overcome those challenges in terms of learning new skill set and building new networks.
I'll say this again. I think, especially because you are out of school, correct? I think engaging in some of those industry bodies and trade associations can be so valuable, because they can give you a wealth of knowledge around measurement, around different aspects of media that could be, free to you or engage with you in some kind of way. And I know they have different programs, even if your company isn't a sponsor, that you can engage in. They're always looking for volunteers because they're ultimately nonprofits. And so showing interest, they always need help. So I'm happy to share some of the industry bodies off once we're done, and you can take a look to see where the interest lies in you. But I think that could be just a quick, low-hanging fruit that you could leverage right away to engage with them and build a network, and also have a learning platform.
I think also when you have networking opportunities, have a list of questions and kind of goals for what you want to get out of it. It might look like you might want to ask somebody for other contacts. If you don't have a lot of contacts in a certain part, a certain section, ask that person, do you know anyone in legal at Warner Brothers Discovery that you might connect me to? People are so willing to do that. And also describing what you do in your background, and ask for feedback on what some transferable skills might be.
You also may have to, and I had to do this, you may have to take a step back, depending on where you are in your career. If you really want to get into media or really want to change industry, sometimes it requires you to, you may not make a lateral move into a position in a different industry. And I took a leap backwards to figure out what I wanted to do, and then work my way back up again. So, so oftentimes, jobs at the level that you feel you are now, when you don't have the industry, they're not looking at you. But a level down, maybe, they may say, wow, she's got this experience. which could be transferable at this level, and then you learn and then you move up.
And you said you started in financial services. So that's a very useful discipline because everybody needs to manage project budgets, P&Ls. So maybe modifying your resume to not fudge anything, but just make it more applicable to what could work in a media and entertainment company. I'm in measurement, and I have somebody do all of our budget for our measurement partners. So things like that, I think, are a foot in the door. And then once you're in the door, you can look at other opportunities within the company.
And look for smaller, some of the big players may not be where you start. So if you can get experience at smaller media companies doing something a little different, that's still experience, right? And you probably, if you find some smaller outfits or companies to work with, you're going to get more experience quicker, right, than if you go to some huge corporation. So, think about and be really creative about where you are looking.
And of course, as a former PwC alum, I'm happy to connect with you as someone who actually did the very same thing you're discussing. So, yeah.
Fabulous.
Before I start, Michelle, I love your outfit. It's giving everything and more. Hi, my name is Alexandra. I'm a recent marketing graduate. And my question is, what to you guys makes a good interview? If there's like 1 to 2 things that comes to mind that you're like, wow, that was a great interview, and you would consider like that candidate, what would those 1 to 2 things be?
For me, it's a relaxed conversation that we're each comfortable having. I think you want to get slightly personal in the beginning and kind of break down those barriers, and not like super personal, but say something about the weather. Remind me where you're located. It's snowing here today. Like just a little. Like we don't have to get right down to business, but like 30 seconds on something that's a little bit personal, and then also asking good questions. I think that's the most important. I think you mentioned it earlier, but you want somebody who's going to be really curious and ask the right questions. Not the right questions, just ask questions.
Yeah. I think asking questions, being comfortable, feeling like a natural conversation are things that I always take away. Like that really felt natural. I felt like I can, you could picture yourself talking in a one-on-one and things like that. I think those are things that I take away as like a good interview. But the questions I think are key because that shares lets me know or puts a spotlight to say this person has done research, this person has thought about this company, this person has thought about the role and how they would impact this role, especially coming in as a director or VP. There's a level of expectation of knowledge, that expertise that you would bring in, and so depending on the levels, I think asking the right questions is helpful.
Yeah, it demonstrates so much. It demonstrates intellectual curiosity, preparation, communicate, right? It really highlights a number of skills when you're prepared with the right questions.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Avi. I just want to start off by saying, personally, my mom was a very big inspiration for me. She was a superwoman, so seeing, superwomen just controlling the industry is something that kind of makes me happy, and seeing you guys evolve and grow. One thing that this event did for me was kind of put myself in your shoes in terms of the male-dominated media. And one thing it has been able to teach me is that in the media space, you guys may feel a little uncomfortable, maybe potentially, in going when you were entry levels. What was some of the struggles or kind of battles that you guys had to face in a predominantly male media culture?
Well, I it's not necessarily in media, but I worked in sports early in my career, which was very male dominated, and so and it was in a different time than we are in 2023. So there was a lot, I was called Coleman, not Kelly, there were the nicknames. We were constantly around sports, and I worked for the Nets at the time, and so there was a sense of bro-ness about the atmosphere at times in the cubicle. I mean, I found my tribe. I found my people there. But it was hard, it was hard to navigate. I didn't drink beer. I love sports, but I didn't drink beer. Or I didn't, I didn't want to hear the crazy stories from the weekend that the guys would tell all the time. And, we had to have, I worked in it was a cubicle space, and I worked in the creative, cube. So it was all the graphic designers and, all of that. And we had to have a little moment to say, guys, I'm part of the team, but I don't need to know all of this. We had to, and they trusted me. And after having those conversations, luckily they were a group of people that were very kind. But it was hard to navigate. And I felt, early in my career, I didn't know, I was still learning myself in this environment. But ultimately, I wanted to show up as me, and what felt comfortable or what felt uncomfortable, I, made sure that I addressed it in a way that felt real and honest and not hurtful to anyone, but it felt like I had to, create some boundaries at times.
I think for me, I wasn't in a male-dominated company for much of my career, but anybody who, when there's an imbalance of power, I think when I started out in magazines many years ago, it was a little bit of a Devil Wears Prada. That was real, and I think people felt like they had, I have this title, I have to treat people a certain way, and I really don't think that's the way things are, or at least not like they were. So it was really just people in power not being as nice or being demanding. I had someone asked me to go get her apples as a snack. Just bring your own apple. I did it, and I think just treat people nicely, regardless of their position or your position. Wherever you end up and whatever your gender.
I think the thing you just said about balance of power reminds me of something that happened to me very early on in my career. Again, I was finance, right? So a little bit different than some of you ladies here up on the stage. But my boss had actually asked me to fabricate a receivable balance because they were being factored, meaning they were being sold for cash. And it was early for me, right? And this is a lesson that applies to everybody, regardless of the function you serve. And I'm thinking, am I just naive? Is this what really happens in the business world? And I'll never forget the conversation I had with my brother, who's considerably older than me, and I said, so-and-so has asked me to do something, and it just doesn't feel right to me. And he said to me the best words I've lived by ever since, and he said, it's better to be unemployed than unemployable, right? So be authentic, if something, your gut, right? We talk about our instincts, our gut, balance of power, it doesn't matter. If you feel that there's something wrong with that, then you are right, and follow that. Because had I done that, I could have been probably arrested, right? Mm-hmm. And the balance of power was really intimidating to me, but I said, absolutely not, I will not do this. And I understand if I'm gonna get fired, but I won't. And it was GE came in, remember the days of GE coming in to audit after that, and thank God, I won the respect of GE and et cetera, but that propelled me into a whole different area. But again, I say follow your gut.
Yeah.
That's good.
Thank you.
All right. I think last but not least.
Hi. Thank you so much for being here today and sharing so much of your knowledge. My name is Gabriella Marinelli. I'm a recent graduate of Hofstra University. Woo! And I'm now interning at ABC's GMA3. I absolutely love it, and it is so much fun. However, I pitch a lot of ideas, and not too much gets a lot of pull. And after a while, it's just becoming kind of discouraging, what is wrong with my ideas? So what is your best piece of advice for accelerating my journey, whether it's in television or any part of media?
Have you asked for feedback?
I do.
Okay.
Yes.
That was going to be my advice, ask for feedback. And I think it doesn't have to be immediately, but ask for feedback, ask for some time with whoever is in charge of greenlighting ideas and ask them, what they're looking for and how you can make that a little bit better. I would maybe bring it up with your manager. We started recently, not recently, it was actually a few years ago, really becoming aware of the number of no's that happen just naturally. Like and you don't know, if a pitch meeting is an hour long, you have to get through all those ideas and you don't always have the time to say the reason why. But the person, again, the person in power is just like, no, 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 no. So it leaves a lot of bad feelings. So maybe even making a recommendation for something that happens. We give, if we're gonna have a pitch meeting, we'll say very specifically, we're looking for these types of ideas and try to give as much information so that people can inform their pitches a little bit better.
And the other thing I would add to that is there a tracker of some sort that shows what's actually getting greenlit?
Yeah.
That way you can kind of track the trends and maybe modify some of your recommendations to align with, if you're not getting the direct feedback, to align with what is being greenlit. I think that that's another way to kind of modify your approach a little bit.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. I was gonna say it's probably worth an audit of what is getting the green light and examine the whys, whether it's the trends, the topics, the way they are pitching it. I think that is probably an exercise that's worth doing in addition to the feedback. But most importantly, I would want you to don't stop pitching. You're gonna hear a lot of no's in life in general, whether it's in this job, personally, whatever. And so the biggest thing is that you're constantly learning from it, and when the yeses happen, they'll be even sweeter and be, worthy of the moment. And so just don't stop pitching.
Is the feedback constructive that you're getting?
A little bit. I mean, it's just, I'm asking the question because I feel like I don't get my answers through the feedback.
What are you, a PA? What's your position?
I'm an intern.
You're an intern.
Doing the same as PA.
They're looking at you to help their pitches, right? So know where you are, and know that the intern's pitches may not get as much traction as the EP's pitches. It's just the hierarchy of production.
Yeah.
So the fact that they're letting you pitch is half the battle at this point. The fact that they're even hearing you and giving you feedback as an intern, pitching ideas to GMA3, like that's a big deal. So you just learn and keep learning from what they're doing, and you don't get discouraged because it only takes one pitch to make them go, huh, that was really amazing.
Yeah.
And then you execute. How are you executing? Because I'm sure you have to be in there and execute what they're, right? Just be good at that and learn. And don't get so stressed out if you feel like, because you're coming in thinking I have all these creative ideas and you're not hearing me. They're not hearing a whole lot. Like, they're rolling along and they probably have a set way that they do things and they have their segments and it's this, that. Don't get discouraged from that. Keep pitching, keep learning, and do a good job at implementing what they are doing.
Okay.
The only thing I would add to that, now I've never pitched an idea for production. It's not my skill set, but I do have to sell ideas through, right? So sometimes before I try to sell an idea through, I'll socialize it with a very select number of people in advance and get some immediate feedback that helps inform how I'm going to try to sell something through. I don't know if that's something you're already doing, but it might be helpful.
Great. Thank you so much. That was great advice. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Lovely. So unfortunately, I know that we are already 5 minutes over, so thank you for sticking around. Thank you for continuing to answer so many questions. If you are available, welcome you to be, I think, in the hallway to meet some of our audience in person. But with that, oh, we do? Okay, perfect. In that case.
Hi, my name is Charlotte. I'm a senior at NYU's Music Technology program. And I really love all of your guys' speech, and especially when you mentioned at an early of a career, you have been through so many stages of discovery and transferring to different industries. And as a senior, like almost graduating next year, and I feel like there's a pivotal moment that I'm trying to figure out what my future lends to. And I have multiple interests in music, technology, and media and culture. And I feel before I hush into just like apply for a job right away, I feel there is a good amount of period that I can discover different industry and study them first, and then figure out like what are the areas that I can maybe try out more. I'm wondering if you could give me and also like many fellows here who are at the beginning of their early career some good advices on how to discover the different industries and also learn about like maybe the future and how we can connect as a creative person into the different fields.
I think, again, it's networking and asking people what they do, how they got here. Use the sample questions from this panel when you are networking. I think also side projects are really helpful, and we haven't really talked about that. So if you're into, even if you as you work, if you work in one area but you're really interested in another, you could do some nonprofit work or paid work. To get that additional experience and add it to your resume, of course, and make more connections.
Yeah, I think you said it earlier. I think that just the tone around this is that like you're starting off in your career, so it's not going to be perfect. Mm-hmm. It's not going. You don't have to get it right. Getting it wrong is just as much of a learning and important as it is to get it right. And so I wouldn't be so caught up in, because I have all of these interests, which way should I go? I would think about the companies, think about the bigger impact you want to do. If you can think about 5 years from now, what does that look like? And then you can maybe back into it. But I wouldn't be so caught up on getting it perfect right now. It's do the jobs, go after what you're interested in and see what lands and see what sticks, and then execute on that really well, because you can continue to pull back the layers of all the things that you're interested in. It doesn't stop because you landed that one job. You don't have to move up what that track is. You can also go another way, because those are the careers I think that we all admire the most. When you see that they look like this, they don't look like this. And so you don't have to get it right is my advice.
Thank you.
I'm going to summarize that as our fourth takeaway. Do what's right, but don't be perfect. Yeah. Well, lovely. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your insights and for your leadership in this industry. We really appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Wow, let's give another round of applause to the amazing leaders. Thank you so much for being here today.